Good morning. I'd like to call the local planning agency meeting to order. First order of business is to call the roll.
Sam Vincent, Chairman Byrd,
Here.
Bob Dennis,
Here.
Fred Forbes,
Here.
John Colapetro, Carolyn Gallagher, Rex Sims.
Here. So we have a quorum. Okay, next thing on the agenda is to consider expedited state review comprehensive plan amendments to create the Coconut Village future land use category and so forth. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Audrey.
Thank you, and I have very little to say other than the fact that I have reviewed the affidavit of publication. It was advertised in the Fort Myers News Press, the notice of this hearing on July 7th, 2014, to look at the change in land use, which is a comprehensive plan amendment. And this is under, there were changes, I think it was in 2012, to Chapter 163, expanding the uses of expedited review. And this is one of the cases where we are doing so. Jackie will be presenting the staff history. I don't know if you want to preface the case and then let the applicant go forward, or if you want the applicant.
Customarily, the applicant goes first, but either way, we're fine.
Whichever you want to do, Jackie.
Mr. Hewley, what would you prefer?
We'll go first.
You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay. So we're all set?
Good morning. For the record, James Enck, agent for the three property owners. We're handing out some visuals for you as we go through the presentation. This morning, we're here for comprehensive land use change and map change as listed. I'm not going to go through the details of the parts, but it's 13.7 acres located at the end of Coconut Road on the north side. This is one of a few properties that have recently been voluntarily annexed into the city. It was deemed that when you annexed in Pelican Landing's Homeowners Association and the marina part to be consistent, this created the opportunity for us to be annexed into the city. It is commonly known as Weeks Fish Camp, which is an old parcel of 30 plus or minus acres that was a commercial fishing operation back as far back as the 40s. Many years ago, again over 40 years ago, the property was created as an unrecorded subdivision, meets and bounds unrecorded subdivision, which created tracts of lands that were mostly inhabited by the Weeks family, and over the time it became other people bought and moved in there. In Lee County, it was in the outlying suburban category. There were two pieces that were deemed wetlands. There's a 3.6 acre piece up in the northeast corner that we're proposing in this plan to leave as a natural wetland area. And then there was another piece in the southeast corner which we're not proposing to protect. It is potentially jurisdictional, but over the years it's been impacted, it's been dug on, it's been cleared over the residents. And looking at it from an environmental standpoint, it's very, very low grade. I believe there's a picture of it, sheet number 6. You can see the cattails. It just looks like a pond right now. Future plans is to incorporate it into the development and to mitigate it as allowable by regulation. The property has been, with the marina piece, has been under development by various entities for a very, very long time. And my current clients purchased a property in 2011 of the marina. and also worked on aggregating the rest of the neighborhood as was, deemed possible. And we came to the point of, we had a large enough piece when the opportunity to go before the city came along, and that's this 17.3 acres and the uniqueness of the boundary description, which is a very strange piece. It's not rectilinear, it's a very odd shape. There are approximately 27 parcels that are remaining outside of the original Weeks Fish Camp that are in the county, and our entities control more than half of those parcels. But there are other parcels that are owned by other people that are on the border of the city limits. We came up with the plan, and part of the plan working with staff is that we looked at the various land use categories of City of Bonita Springs. And with the inclusion of the Hyatt and with the inclusion of a piece of Raptor Bay, which all came in the annexation process independently, but it created an aggregate, and it created an opportunity to do something really special at the end of the road that is water dependent related. We had the marina, and the Hyatt was there. Those were the two existing pieces if you look at the community as an aggregate. And we felt like going with a standard, not standard, but a existing land use designation may not be the most creative way to use the property. So working with staff, we've come up with this new land use designation called Coconut Village, which is deemed to be more resort-oriented, more waterfront-oriented, to incorporate the Hyatt, to incorporate our marina, to incorporate, some of the other parts that are there. So that's the part that we're bringing forth today. And that's the specific language that I'd like to walk you through, but first I wanted the handouts that I gave you are some pictures. The first 6 pictures is pictures of the community, our property that's in this application, and most of those structures have been removed. It's noted on the plan because we've started a process of cleaning up the property. There were derelict buildings, there were unsafe buildings and unsafe structures. We've removed all of those. We're in the middle of a process of an exotic removal program where we're removing all the exotic vegetation that's on the property in planning for future development. And then the last 4 or 5 pictures shows the existing adjacent properties, which you could see this is it's a dated community of a mixture of one single family, I think, is left, and then mobile homes, because it was originally a mobile home park. So with this land use plan and with this requested change before you, we felt like there was an opportunity to really bring forth a resort community, and as I said before, that's why the land use designation of Coconut Village was created, and the language was specifically written to accommodate the marine, retail, hotel, office, to have a mixed-use type development. And then from that, we expanded in the various restrictions. I don't like to say regulations in a comp plan because I personally believe the comp plan is a vision and not a regulatory document. But it's all of these things, and I'd like to go through them, which is item A, all new development with Coconut Village category shall be required to be zone plan development. All density, intensity, height, and types of use will be established during the plan development rezoning process. So anything that's done using this proposed Coconut Village land use has to have a plan development on it. There's not going to be any standard underlying zoning that's going to be allowed, which gives the flexibility in that process to fine tune a very good project. We have submitted to the city. There is a zoning action that is in process. It's scheduled to go before the zoning board on the 22nd. Item B, appropriate uses within Coconut Village future land use category include the following: marina and marina accessory uses. It's an existing marina in the current City of Bonita comp plan. There is a strong desire to encourage marinas to remain a marina and to allow flexibility to expand the marina if it is possible to expand the marina. Marina uses shall not be solely for private use. Limited private club use, as defined in the plan development process, may be allowed. The intent of that language is to have a marina, though privately run and privately owned, is still available for the public on a first-come, first-served fee basis, rental basis, slip rental, those type of things, but not to become just a private club. And that's part of the closing off of the water development that everywhere in the state is become very sensitive to taking away the waterfront and turning them into condos with private marine, private slips in the back, and the public does not have the right to use it. Following along, hotels, resorts, and ancillary retail, cultural, public, and private recreational uses. That again goes with the intent of what we're trying to do of creating a resort-type village where you have the hotel use, you have potential other ancillary-type uses, and you create a marina, minor retail that goes down along with the marina so that guests of the hotels and citizens can go to the waterfront and experience dining and minimal shopping. I mean, this is not going to be big shopping. It would be outfitters. It would be ice cream shops. It would be the kind of things that you would expect. And the whole, I don't know how familiar you are, but this process is kind of patterned after, on a very small scale, Atlantis over in the Bahamas that has the hotel and then has an actual village of restaurants and shops that everybody gets to use. Residential dwellings, when incorporated into the resort complex, the intent there is to have a working resort, maybe residential. Again, this is in concept of where you have the hotel and then you have some outlying uses that may or may not be owned by other people. Cottages, longer stay kind of things where people could come spend a week and have a kitchen and versus a standard hotel room. The development standards that are proposed in here: development shall be required to be located to minimize loss of environmentally sensitive areas. That goes without saying that that's just good development practices. And our property, the 17 acres before you today, has the two wetland areas, which I have talked about how we're going to protect the 3.6 acres in the northeast. Non-residential uses shall be limited to a maximum floor area ratio, FAR, of 1.2. This is consistent with the adjacent Pelican Landing land use that they have there, which staff calls salmon, where it has the 1.2. We're just continuing that on. Residential uses with a resort character and lifestyle may be integrated into the resort use and may share in the resort amenities. As I mentioned before about the possibility of having ownership of residential uses open to, and they would be able to utilize the resort and the hotel amenities if that is desired in the planning process, in the zoning process. Residential density shall be limited to no more than 6 units per acre. That again is a carryover from the Pelican Landing land use. the current plan before you today, the zoning action, we do not have any residential in this specific piece of property. But we all felt that since it does include potentially other properties that have been annexed into the city, it would be better to address and set a residential limit now so that you don't have to, you know, that other people don't have to go through this process again of doing a comp plan amendment when the other pieces, the 55 acres to the north piece or something comes in, if they choose to do residential, it's already been established and they don't have to do a comp plan amendment. We can just do it at one time. Residential density calculations shall be considered for the gross project acreage regardless of other uses of the projects. That's intended to be a typical mixed use where you calculate residential, you calculate commercial, you blend them all together, and you come up with a, you know, a good blend and a good project. We've added a section on height, and this is self-evident with the Hyatt. Buildings over 75 feet from base flood elevation to the eaves shall be limited to a location that does not negatively impact adjacent property view corridors or neighborhood compatibility. It sets the ground rules for incorporating the Hyatt into being compatible, and should additional lands attempt to go over 75 feet, it kind of sets the guidelines. The second part of that continues that by saying compatibility with surrounding buildings. So in the plan development process that is required, it would be looked at in the public forum as to what the intent is and what the proposal is. Locations shall have access to a transportation network with adequate capacity and sufficient and navigable access to the waters of Estero Bay. I'll address the waters to Estero Bay first and foremost. Is the channel coming out of the basin that's in the aquatic preserve is got a self-limiting depth of 3.2 feet, I believe it's 0.2 feet. So this marina will not be a big boat marina. It will not be a sailboat marina. It's going to be the small pontoon boat. It's going to be the small outboards. It's going to be the fishing type things that are there. But it is set up to do that. The other part of the transportation network is everything from this project has to come out Coconut Road, which is a collector road, and then accesses US 41. Our TIS that we've looked at has, from the zoning standpoint, what we intend to do on this project, that the level of service goes from B, kind of a high B, to C by adding just not a significant amount of trips. The final category is a coastal high hazard, and they have impacts on sheltering, evacuation resulting from development, redevelopment activities within the coastal high hazard area shall be mitigated through cooperation and coordination with Lee County Emergency Management Operations at the time of local development order. If the shelter and evacuation mitigation has been provided through the development of regional impact process, then no further mitigation is required at the time of local development. Matt can speak in detail of this. My only part of that is the state, with the reduction in DCA, has basically in Chapter 163 remanded how coastal high hazard areas are dealt with on a local level, and it's deemed to focus on evacuation of residential units, of which this application does not propose or will not propose any residential units in the current zoning package. With that, that concludes my presentation, and open to any questions that the board may have.
Any questions?
Yes. Okay. Your entire access to Estero Bay is simply through the portion of the marina that's occupied now. The wetlands to the north you don't contemplate a walkway or a pier or any improvement in that at all?
The wetlands to the north are currently being placed under a conservation easement and will have no development.
So everything is going to work around the existing opening that we have. And it was interesting when you said about the channel. Well, one of the questions I had was that as these things progress, as marinas progress, sooner or later, they want to handle bigger vessels, and then we come into the dredging situation. You're saying that this development, as you propose it now, would not require additional dredging for the channel coming into the marina?
We have obtained authorization from FDEP, and we have a permit on the table. We have to do a certain conditions to enforce the permit with the Army Corps of Engineers, and both of those applications address the fact that no dredging will be allowed in the aquatic preserve.
Okay, does that just, my further question along those lines, does that just apply to your development, or 20 years down the road when somebody else owns the development, does it apply to them also?
Well, the one thing that you have about marinas is they have to be consistent with the manatee protection plan that Lee County has. And you have to have a certain number of linear footage of shoreline to create the number of slips that you have. As someone that does a lot of entitlements on marinas in the area, I can pretty safely say you're not going to get somebody else in the city of Bonita Springs that wants to build a marina. All your shorelines are basically mangrove protected. You've got safeguards in your comprehensive plan and the marina siting plan such that I do not see where that would come into play. And the fact that the channel is in a state aquatic preserve, there's quite a few regulations in 1820 and 1821 that would make it highly, highly unlikely that somebody's going to be able to dredge that channel.
All right, second question I have is, I heard your comment. One of the questions I had was about public access, and I see these things done over time in various communities around us that become private boat clubs, members only, and so forth and so on, and effectively shuts the public out. And I heard you say that that was not going to happen here, but here again, we're looking at the people that come beyond you. Does that apply to them also?
That's the one where I feel like in the comp plan, it's setting the parameters, and we have, you know, the parameters in that one part where it has marina uses shall not be solely for private use.
Okay.
And then that would be further advanced and actually regulated during the plan development process.
All right, it brings up my next question. On page 32, we were talking about Estero Bay Marina Project, that's you, will not allow live-aboard vessels.
Yes.
That's what it says here. But I look at it and say, does that include subsequent owners and so forth?
That includes any vessel that resides in the marina, and that is also a specific condition in the state and federal permit.
Okay.
So if we or someone else down the road allowed liveaboards, we would be violating 3 different levels of jurisdiction.
Well, those are problems that come up that,
Yes, they do.
you know, are difficult to handle once they arrive. So the time to handle them is before the situation arrives. We touched on page 33, I had a question about private boat clubs, and you've answered that. You've answered the physical access and the liveaboard And the other question I have is, well, you answered that, about, on 34, it says the marina is on a marked navigation channel and no dredging is proposed. In the aquatic preserve, that kind of throws a little curve there. It says you're not going to do any channeling in the aquatic preserve, which is the 3 acres north of there, but it doesn't specifically say the channel, but you've covered that.
Let me clarify that of the no dredging preserve is in the aquatic preserve. That is the entire Restero Bay. It's not just our wetland.
Not just your.
It's the whole part. We are going to propose, and we do have state and federal authorization, to expand the marina basin to make it more compatible with current standards and
Yes.
current boats versus 1940 boats.
I can see that down over the year, I've gone out there for 25 years, and I can see how it's grown up down through the years. That concludes.
Any other questions, Bob?
Yes, I have a couple. I wanted to clarify one thing, and I believe I know what the answer is. In terms of any permitting, the permit goes with the property regardless if it's state or local or federal, correct?
Correct.
So the individual may be involved in terms of the application, but in terms of the permit itself, it goes with the property.
Correct.
So I
If-
don't think you have to worry about someone coming down the line and trying to do something that's not consistent with the existing permits. So, see what
hear
I'm
you.
saying? So that's an insurance policy that we have. Channel markers. I've never been on the bay from Weeks Camp. Are there actual markers
Yes.
that will get you out there? Because I'm more concerned about people getting out of the channel and disturbing the bottom.
It is a very well-defined and marked channel because we utilize it and Pelican Landing Homeowners Association Marina utilizes it.
Okay. Another question, but I forgot what it was.
Age will do that.
Oh, yes, tell me about it. In terms of the wetland area, I'm thinking that maybe in the future, the university may want to do some studies or anything. Would that possibility would that be open? Where they could come in and maybe do some habitat studies, not only of just the bay, but also the wetland areas. I would want to see them being pushed out if there was a opportunity here for some joint studies between the owner and the state and the city.
I could speak for my clients, which do plan to build and operate the facility, that they are very sensitive to the community and the community needs, and I do not see that would be a problem should FGCU want to do that.
Okay, just as long as the permitting wouldn't be a roadblock or a
No,
bump
it
in
would
the
not
road
be a
for-
roadblock. The conservation easement over that wetland is strictly for physical construction of structures.
Sounds good to me. So,
I have one other little question.
Go ahead.
In this phase right here, there's no residential units.
Correct. In the zoning application that is moving forward, there is no residential in this. It consists of the marina, it consists of an outfitter, a restaurant, and a dry storage barn, and a parking garage is the only proposed uses.
So in the future, when the time comes to have residential units there, what's the process you have to do that?
The process would have to be a plan development for whatever moves forward, consistent with this language that we're talking about today. If it goes outside the bounds of this language we're talking about today, then it would have to do a plan change.
Well, the development that you're proposing right at the moment doesn't anyways use up this 13 acres. It just uses a small portion of it.
The zoning process that is
I mean,
ongoing,
the use, pardon me, the
Oh.
ultimate use, the
the
building.
ultimate use,
Yeah.
no. What we're proposing today is well within the guidelines that are set in this land use.
I asked the wrong question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You've got 9 acres of development land there approximately, right?
Actually, it's more like 14.
Well, you take off the aquatic part, don't you?
Well, the mangrove is 3.6 acres out of 17.3.
Oh, well, that comes off that, all right. But the development that you're proposing right now with the marina and the associated structures and so forth doesn't use near all this land.
Yes, it incorporates all the land. We've got a stormwater management system that takes up quite a bit of land. And with the uses of the wet slips and the dry slips and the restaurant and the retail, there's significant parking that's got to be required. So the plan that's moving forward in zoning does utilize all this land.
Yeah, see, that plan wouldn't be part of this application,
It would be
because
the
it's a
zoning
different, it's a plan development, so they get to see the master plan, but the master plan's not part of the comp plan or the map or text. That's it.
Fred, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Jackie? Somebody else?
Lily, do you have any?
Nope, that's it.
Good morning. For the record, Jacqueline Genson with Community Development. Staff does have we'll try to keep it a brief presentation, but go ahead and hit some other notes that the applicant left for us to kind of go ahead and do. So this is the request, which Audrey did read into the record, just outlining that we are here today to amend the future land use element to add a new land use category. And then if that's approved by this board, you recommend approval, then we're going to go ahead. And the second request is to amend this land into using that new category and also having the other portion of the property go into resource protection, which is already an established land use classification in the Bonita plan. This is the location map. I'm pretty sure you all know where this is. This is the city of Bonita Springs here, Lee County, Collier County, but just for the public, you go up Tamiami Trail to where Coconut Road is, head west, and go up, and it's near the Hyatt Regency Coconut Point area and Raptor Bay area. Just to give you some background, which the applicant did touch on, this property was subject of an annexation agreement. The annexation agreement is in your packets under Attachment B, which always contemplated having a land use change, creating a new classification for this property. Florida statute does require that we honor the existing county entitlements until we go ahead and process the city entitlements, which is what we're doing here today. So right now, the property still remains in the Lee County land use classification of outlying suburban and wetlands. For zoning, the existing zoning, there is an existing CPD on the property from 1994. There's also a RPD, MHPD, which is for residential mobile homes, which is from 1991. And then you have some conventional zoning districts of R3 and AG2, which allows residential uses at some level in the ag. The proposed zoning, as Mr. Inc. Testified to, they are going through a companion rezoning to a planned development, which is part of the proposed land use classification requirement. So they are doing that simultaneously with this project. Regards to existing uses, the applicant gave you some pictures of what the existing property, the uses that they have on it, what has been removed. And again, what is proposed with the companion rezoning is that they are going to redevelop the marina and expand it with 72 wet slips, 150 dry slips, dry storage facility, and some retail uses totaling 207,000 square feet. Again, that's a companion zoning application that is going before the zoning board next week. Background, again, this project itself consists of 21 parcels. They're all controlled under 3 LLCs, which are moving forward with this application. Again, it's to redevelop and expand the marina. The applicant is utilizing some existing entitlements. There is an existing DRI on this piece of property, and to the south is part of the Pelican Landing DRI, which does authorize the 150 dry boat slip storage use. They did obtain a FDEP ERP permit, and they had the notice to intent from Army Corps of Engineers to go ahead and do the redevelopment on the site. Right now, the state and federal permits require that they obtain local permits. So this is what they are doing right now, is getting the land use entitlements and the rezoning so they could go ahead and do also what's in the state and federal permits. Why we need this new category, Mr. Ink did touch on. This is a unique project, and especially because of the height and how we want to apply this to other adjacent annex properties in the city, a new classification was created to accommodate those uses and properties. Just to go over the surrounding area, the area in the white overlay, if you will, is the city's jurisdictional boundaries. This is the subject property today that is before you. You'll see to the south, this is the Hyatt Regency Coconut Point Resort and Spa, which is a CPD and has, well, they don't have a land use classification yet. They will be coming in soon to go ahead and establish that land use, which might be this Coconut Village category. Here you have the Pelican Landing Community Association Marina, which is an existing marina that they use. They also share with the Hyatt to go to their private beach club facility. They too also may expand their marina at some point. They do have state permits and federal permits to do that. The Aquatic Preserve to the west. This is the remaining properties of the Weeks Fish Camp. There are some, as Mr. Ink said, some other property owners that are in there under different ownership. And then the applicant does own several properties as well within this area. And here to the north, you have the Rafter Bay Golf Club. And this is also part of the golf club, but it's in conservation easements and whatnot. Just to go over the existing Lee County future land use classification, a good portion of this property is in outlying suburban, which does allow 1 to 3 dwelling units per an acre. It also does allow commercial development, but the county's comprehensive plan is much different than the city's, so it's an apple and orange comparison. Based on their classification for commercial, you have to have certain road criteria to put commercial on unless you're an island and whatnot. So that's one of the classifications that the property currently has. And then that's the current classification for wetlands in the Lee plan under private ownership, environmentally sensitive areas. The property also is in what's called a water-dependent overlay, and that is to protect the existing marina, access to the marina, and conversion into residential uses that would take away that access. So that property is within that overlay as well. The proposed new land use classification, Mr. Ink went over it in detail, so I won't go over it again unless there's other questions, but it is in your packet under Attachment A, but goes generally over the uses that the city would like to see in here. And again, the intent is to allow public access and private access to the Estero Bay and allow those marine-oriented uses, mixed-use commercial, residential, on a limited basis, hotel resort-like uses. And as Mr. Ink said, we went ahead and agreed that the residential density at 6 units an acre, the FAR ratio of 1.2 units an acre is very common for the city to use on existing planned developments that were annexed into the city or incorporated into the city. So like your Village Walks, your Palmyra, your Bonita Bay, your Pelican Landing, they all got what we call the salmon color, which is a moderate density mixed-use residential classification, 6 units an acre, 1.2 FAR. So we felt that honoring the same density and intensity ratios was appropriate. As Mr. Ink said, the difference with this category is really the height, and that is proposed to be handled at time of zoning, where you really get into your compatibility and your conditions of approval for buffering and aesthetics and whatnot. And he hit on the coastal high hazard. A lot has changed since the new legislature changed or omitted 9J5. So we went ahead in this policy and stated that coastal high hazard would be coordinated at time of development order approval, and essentially we leave it up to the city and the county to coordinate that at that time. This is the existing LEAP plan map, so you can see that outlying suburban, the wetlands. This is the wetland that Mr. Ink explained that is highly severely impacted. So those are the classifications currently under the LEAP plan. This is the water dependent overlay, and that's the Weeks Fish Camp right there. And this is the proposed map amendment. So the area in pink is proposed to be the Coconut Village land use classification. That would apply to that property. And then this would be the resource protection classification here, which is the wetland, which, as they said, their state and federal permits require that it be put into a conservation easement. This is the subject site of staff's photos. This is the marina here, another portion of the marina. This is one of the existing residential homes that is on the property. This is looking south off of Drain Street. And this is just another one of the access roads off of Mammy Drive. Consistency with the Bonita plan. Staff felt that the applicant did a very thorough analysis of the Bonita plan, and that is also in your packets. So we touched in our staff report just on a couple of policies, but overall we felt that the applicant did a very thorough analysis on how this proposed land use classification and the changes to the map are consistent with the current Bonita plan. In terms of land use patterns, the city wants to promote economic vitality through a mixture of land use patterns. So this proposed category does allow for that to happen. Levels of service, there are level of service letters in the backup from EMS, fire, schools, should anyone in the future want to propose residential units, fire, EMS, solid waste. So there is existing capacity to serve this development. Environmental critical areas, again, they were preserving a significant mangrove forest to the north. They're going to be sensitive to any type of wildlife that would be on the property. Water quality, with the expansion and redevelopment of the marina, they're actually making the water quality much better. Not to get into details, but as part of the expansion, they're going to be flushing out the existing marina. So this is very positive for this area. Coastal high hazard policies, all the expenditures are going to be private. We're going to have access to the marina. There's no residential proposed in this classification, so they're consistent with the coastal high hazard policies. Again, maintaining access to Estero Bay, that is a component of this classification, and also in the zoning we are going to have some proposed conditions that do address that as well. Marina site design. Again, we're protecting the marina, we're keeping the marina open, it's not converting into a non-marina-like use, so they're consistent with that policy. And again, the city does want to go ahead and encourage commercial water-dependent uses where they are established, so they're consistent with that policy as well. Surrounding area incompatibility, as we stated before, this area here, I mean, they're all geared towards resort-like uses. So that's why we're also very supportive of this land use classification through the zoning process, acknowledging that this area is still residential in nature. At the zoning level, we are recommending conditions of approval that address compatibility and whatnot. And should these properties in the future transition into something similar to this, that would be addressed at the time. Again, just going over everything. So just assessments and conclusions, staff recommends approval of this redevelopment and expansion of the marina. We find it consistent with the Bonita plan. They are going ahead and taking away structures where they're residential, and they're structures that are not built to current FEMA standards or Florida Building Code standards, and we're replacing those uses with commercial uses in a high vulnerability area, coastal high hazard areas. Resource protection classification on the map will protect mangroves and permit protection, not only from the city's land use plan, but also for state and federal permits. They have obtained state and federal permits for the expansion of the marina, and there's no residential uses being proposed at this time for this development. Should another piece of property want to go ahead and do that, we'll be looking at that time through the land use map amendment process and also through the companion rezoning. But again, at this point, there's no residential proposed in the companion zoning request. We're reviewing the specifics at zoning. This is, and they're running concurrently. So when it goes to City Council will see both applications. And they're maintaining access to Estero Bay. There's adequate levels of service. The property was advertised physically with signposting. There also was an advertisement in the newspaper. Just spoke to one property owner that has several properties in there, and he is here today. But otherwise, I haven't heard from the public regarding this matter. And with appropriate development standards in place, we think that this would be a positive project for the city of Bonita Springs. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the text amendment and the map amendments. And if you have any questions, I am here to speak. John Dolmer's here to speak, and also Mike Kirby.
Any questions of the group here? At this point, do we have any people from the public that would like to speak?
Yes, sir, I'd like to just go over a couple of things. My name is, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Bob Garcia, and I'm one of the others in regards to a residence within the development. And I just wanted to go over a few things. Just I'm actually for all of the proposed changes. I just wanted to review a couple things just as it impacts the current residences that live directly adjacent to the property. We have a couple concerns in regards to drainage and how because the water, I wish I had I don't know if I can just go and point to this area. Yeah, I'm not good with those because my hands shake a little bit, but the water tends to drain towards
You
the
use
west.
we use a microphone so we get it on the system
There you go.
here. Thank you.
I've been an owner there for 20-plus years, and as well as the other 6 residences, which basically along this border, this black line border, and up, up here, we have approximately 7+ acres of property in the center of that the entire development, and the water tends to drain down the streets and into the bay when there's heavy rains. And so one of our concerns is that with this development, that this will have water retention on our properties. So I guess, part of in our requests that, if this proposal goes through, is that the drainage, the master plan incorporates these, the entire roads rather than just this area. We're just concerned about that. Thank you. So that would be one of our concerns. The other concern that we have is, and I've talked to, most of the residences are out of town right now, but I've talked to everybody that is currently an owner there. The other concern we would have is for the public parking and parking of any trucks. We currently have the Hyatt, which is along Coconut Road, and what happens is that they get semi-trucks that park along the road and block the roads. The normal person wouldn't really realize this unless you live there or frequent the property, but once the semi-trucks line the road, it makes it real difficult to maneuver and get in and out of our property. So I was just hoping that there'd be some type of proposal that we could put no parking signs on all of the roads and the easements that we use to get in and out of our development. There's a proposal for a restaurant, and I only noticed that there are 10 parking areas for vehicles with boat trailers. I noticed that on on a given weekend, you'll see 20 or so vehicles with trailers parked before the marina was closed. There's a lot more than 10 public, people that come in and use the marina. So I'm concerned with that, only in regards to once those 10 slots are filled up, where else are they going to park? I noticed that there's a parcel A, which has a lot of parking areas, and then there's a 3-level parking structure, but I'm not sure if those are accommodating for vehicles with boat trailers. So in regards to the public and how much of the usage will it be first come, first serve, and once the 10 slips are filled up, then will there still be public allowed to launch, and then where are they going to park their vehicles with trailers? And my guess is that they're going to park wherever they can, and my thought is it's going to be in front of our properties and along the roads. And so there's just some concerns. We had a mailbox at the very entrance of our community, and that was moved, and there were blockades put in. We weren't asked if they, where would we like the mailboxes, or it just happened. And there was fencing put up all along the frontage of our properties, with blockades. So we had been accustomed to coming in and out of the development through the main marina entrance. Now we're forced to come in through the back entrance. The Lime Rock Road is in real bad condition, and so we've got very large puddles that we have to drive through. With the rains now, the puddles tend to stay there. So we're just trying to get some type of consideration with the development that's going on. And since we do have a sizable area, and there are still 6 owners in there, right in the center of the property, we're going to have to. I just really want to work with the city, the planning department, and the developers in order to try to accommodate, make it a win-win situation for everybody. So kind of the highlight would be, we're concerned about our privacy and our easement and not being blocked out or barricaded out of the area. We've been accustomed to there for many, many years. So it's a little bit of an invasion, but again, it's growth, and we understand that. And again, I believe we all have a positive outlook for the development, but we're just concerned on how it's going to impact us as owners. And so I have a list of items that I've submitted to Jackie, and I was just kind of hoping that some of those items would be adhered to or at least looked at, and maybe we can come to some type of an agreement. There's a small section on the plans where it says limited access emergency road, which is an access road that we've been accustomed to using. So I'm trying to get a definition on what that means. Maybe it can be answered, but for the most part, the drainage, the parking, potential extra parking of vehicles that might invade on us, and the 10 boat and vehicle with trailer slots. Are there going to be more, or can parcel A be used as a secondary parking area? So those were some of the questions I had.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
What we may do when we get done with our public comment here, maybe the applicant would like to discuss some of those points. Anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Okay, do you want to address some of those issues that he brought up, please?
Yes, sir. For the record, James Inc. again.
Mr. Chairman, excuse
Yes.
me. I think a lot of the issues this gentleman's talking about really don't address what we're dealing
Okay.
with here, because I think the answers he needs and the questions he needs to present have to go to the zoning board. Those are really development regulations
All right.
and not comp plan issues. So I think it'd be behoove of the applicant to speak to the
right.
owners about it.
Okay,
And I would like to agree with Mr. Thinis that those issues are not unaddressed. They simply will be addressed at the zoning board level
All right.
through the plan development process as opposed to what's before you today.
And I thank the gentleman for coming up and bringing up those questions, because I think now at least he's on the record that he wants to work with the applicant and the city.
Oh, the questions are relevant and they do need to be addressed. It's just that they're not appropriate for this particular hearing. They're
Because
appropriate.
we
for
haven't
this-
seen the
Yes,
master
sir.
concept.
Exactly.
okay.
And again, I'm 100% for what the applicants are trying to do, so I do appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you coming up.
Thank you very much, yeah. Okay, no other public comment, then do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we find both the text and the map consistent with the comp plan.
A second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. The next item on the agenda is general public comment. Anybody have any general public comment? Our next meeting is scheduled for August 14th at 8:30. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 12th meeting.
Make a motion. I second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, at this point, the meeting's adjourned.